So what happens with APM is that a person comes to the exam, they have knowledge, and even more, they feel very good about themselves because there are many models that they have just studied for the strategic business leader exam. So there are no calculations, well, just a few of them, and they're very simple. So you feel empowered. And then you go to exam, and then you get a result. And actually, the results vary, and some people get something like 25 marks, and some people get something like 45 marks. Okay, how come? You were so sure that you nailed the exam. How come you failed? Well, those people who got something like 25 marks, it means that they misinterpreted their requirement. So basically, they have spent their time answering the question that was not asked. And as such, they did not get into the mocking scheme. Why? Well, first of all, when you read the requirement, you need to acknowledge that quite often, more often than not, there are several requirements, not one. So, for example, if the question is assess the external risk that the company may be facing and suggest up to 5 indicators to measure the risk, this means that you basically have 2 questions. You need to find out what the risks are. And the next question is that you need to talk about the indicators. You need to suggest and justify these indicators. And if you just offered indicators, this means that you will not get more than half mark. Well, half of the marks that are allowed for this part. If you just talked about risks, then again, you will get not more than half of the marks. Another thing is that quite often part of the requirement is going to be in the scenario. In this lengthy scenario, you will see that the question is not just whatever is in the requirement, but it is much bigger. So, for example, your requirement can ask you to talk about the implications on the company of introducing value-based management. And then you read the scenario, and the scenario says that you need to talk about implications on performance management, performance measurement, performance management systems. So meaning that you need to talk more, you need to talk about 3 aspects. Or, for example, that not only you need to talk about implications, but also about risk mitigation strategies that a company would likely to pursue. Sometimes questions can be formulated in a very tricky way. So, for example, if a question is evaluate the extent to which some model can help company to do something, this means that you do not talk only about good stuff. You do not talk only about how it will help. Instead, what the examiner is asking you is to talk about that on one hand, it will help, and you will get something like 5 points. On the other hand, it will not help, and you get something like 5 points. So meaning that if you just talk about that in the positive way, in this help key, you will not get more than half of the marks. On the other hand, if the question itself asks you how this model can help the company, so without the extent word, then this means that you need to talk only about positive side. And if you talk about negative aspects, you will not get any technical marks. And there is a list of words. There is a list of verbs that can be confusing, that they are confusing for all people, regardless of their language experience. And we are going to discuss that. Finally, the problem is that questions can have different finishing line. So, for example, if a question is, discuss the impact of the introduction of business performance re-engineering, business process re-engineering initiatives on the performance, then you're going to talk about revenue, cost of sales, cost per unit, speed, and so on. If the question is discuss the same thing, the impact of the same thing on performance management, then this means that you will need to talk about that is going to impact the budgeting process. That is going to impact the, let's say, quality management. That is going to impact the list of key performance indicators the company is using. So the answers are going to be very different, even if they differ with only 2 words. So failure to understand the requirement is something that makes people earn as little as 25 marks. And you see how easy it can be.